Councillor Gontaszewski.
Thank you, Mayor. I didn't think we should let this one get moved on block, given the scale. One of the things I say nearly every year is the biggest decision we make is the budget. And I would observe that that is probably not the case this year, because this is by far and away the biggest decision I've been involved with on council. And so although I can't talk to the confidential items and all that sort of stuff, I guess there wasn't a huge number of questions from council members at the council meeting, but that on total volume across the number of council members here. However, that does not mean that we have not paid a great deal of attention to this process. There's been extensive engagement between council and the administration in this process to make sure that we are comfortable. It's just not practical to have that depth of conversation and engagement in a public forum like this. We would be here until the wee hours of the morning. So from my perspective on this, there's probably two key questions we need to answer. One is whether or not it's the right decision to look down the sale of the land piece. That's the first question. And then the second question, which is the one we're also talking about a bit tonight, is that have we selected the right proponent? Now, from my perspective, I can absolutely see the benefit of this for the Leederville Town Centre once this is fully developed. We are probably going to be going through a painful process in that transition from where we are now to that future state, which will be difficult and will be really challenging for the administration to manage. So no pressure there, guys, but it's all on you. But I think the end result that we will see out of this is going to be a much better town centre. We're going to have a huge number of people in that locality, a much greater increase in the commercial offerings and so forth in that space that just will build on that resilience of that town centre as a location. We saw it when it's not the Dale Alcott building, the ABN building came in, that bringing in that new business with all those new people, utilizing the lunchtime sites, the businesses in that really helped to support and underpin the Leederville community. And I see this is just a further expansion and extension of that. So it's really exciting. I'm really looking forward to seeing how this folds out over the next few years, and that, you know, in a decade from now, you'll be able to sit in Leederville with this redeveloped space going on. But we've done a lot of work to get to that point in terms of developing our structure plan and creating the framework and space in which this can also be developed. So this isn't a quick, speedy decision that we've made, although we have moved relatively quickly in getting to this point. But there's been an awful lot of work in and behind the scenes, particularly by a number of the staff here tonight, to actually make that happen. The second question is the group that we've selected the correct group to select, and from a quality of what they're offering, and also from a financial, so if you wanted to consider it a qualitative and quantitative assessment, that they are the best option from my view. From my read of that data, that is the best way forward. We could always kick this down the road and wait for another option to come forward, but from what we're looking at today, this looks like a really good, strong option for the Leederville Town Centre. And there would be no guarantees that if you waited longer that you would get something better to come along in the future. So from my perspective, I'm happy to support this work going forward, and look forward to the next steps as we progress. Thank you.
Councillor Gontaszewski.
Thank you. Echo your comments, Councillor Loden, very well said. I just want to add two things just from my perspective, that we've spent much of the last term of council and some of the preceding term before that, since talking about this project and Design Leederville, and all of the public engagement and consultation that's happened through the development of the Leederville Precinct Structure Plan. From my view, it would have been an unusual, I'm really pleased that we've been able to go through the process of developing the Leederville Precinct Structure Plan and then move through this part of the process fairly quickly, although I have just said it's been like 4 years. I feel that it has been handled with some expediency, but not without the requisite rigour. But I think that this is the next step in seeing that highest and best use of land as set out and determined through that community engagement around the Leederville precinct structure plan, and not just community, but technical engagement. This is the next step towards delivering on that. And I see that as being part of the city's going to promise to the community when we develop those sorts of plans, is that that's what we actually want to see. We don't just want to have those documents be developed and then put on a shelf and not live in the world. So I think that this process has been really positive. And it was actually reading through the confidential attachments today was actually quite reflective for me. And I also think that where we have landed in terms of the proposal that we're considering here is clearly the best option that was presented. But that there is the process going forward. There's a level, the mandatory process, and then the level of, I guess, public scrutiny, accountability, and I guess the option for review and consideration, and I guess built into the process is, we still have the option as a council to move forward or look at new information at the end of this process. And so I think that what's really great tonight is that this starts to live in the world. And I think that that's a really positive thing. So we're back out in front of the community, and we can start to get people interested and considering and excited about what's to come. That's a really positive thing.
Thank you, Councillor Gontaszewski. Councillors? Well, look, I'll make some comments. I think this is an incredibly exciting project. And as has been pointed out by Councillor Loden and Councillor Gontaszewski before me, a long time in the making, which we started with our Leederville precinct structure plan, because we knew that we had to have the planning framework in place, that we worked with the community to ensure that what happened to this very high value, precious land, public land, was really maximised to its fullest extent for the benefit of the community, for the benefit of Leederville's future, to really harness Leederville's great potential as a transit-orientated development. It was really pleasing a couple of months ago when the Property Council put out their transit-orientated developments Get On Board paper, where they teamed up with some research. I think it was at do you remember who it was, David? I did have it in front of me just earlier. It was Taylor, one of the big planning consultants. It was TBB, yes, Taylor Burrell Burnett. And they basically did an assessment of what makes a great transit-orientated development site right now immediately. And they talked about inner city TODs, and they talked about Leederville being the prime, the number one location. They had a number of metrics that they measured, and Leederville scored the highest and came out as the number one place for transit-orientated development. And part of the metrics were around community acceptance. And I think that's the thing, like when we put out this precinct plan, we actually were going through the process with 140 Frame Court, which was a live development with an LDP happening at the same time, so people could really see and feel that we were talking about some pretty significant heights, but it was on the freeway facing side, that we're maintaining the human scale of the Oxford Street town centre strip, and that we really wanted to, do something imaginative, do something that was very green in terms of 5-star Green Star rating, really great landscape values, community benefits. For the first time, we have a planning framework where we can say, if you want to go high, you must deliver community benefits. And I think we've just really seen that come to fruition through this proposal. And it's very exciting, it's very high quality. Whilst we still can't talk about the details, it will be up on our Imagine Vincent page tomorrow, and we are releasing this for the community to see where we've got to. And I think that is incredible to get to this point. We could maintain at grade street level car bays, but by going multi-storey, we release that high value land to really to be developed in a number of different ways. And not all of this land will go to a private developer. A lot of it, a great percentage, will remain in public ownership. So I can't go into the details, but significant amount of public realm, new facilities, etc., to be of the benefit to the local community. We'll be increasing the population. We know that with population, we can guarantee the success of the town centre to thrive. And we are going to be making sure that good design and good sustainability remain at the heart of this. So it has been a process of many parts, and it has been very thorough. We have used our own staff, and I just want to commend the director, John Corbellini, and manager, Tara Goster, who have just shone through this process. It's just been incredible to see you use your skills and just grow through this process so much. And alongside them, we have used the services of Signet West. We've had a probity advisor, Kevin from Stanton's, and we've also recently been joined by Simon Moen from Jackson McDonald, who has just been absolutely thorough. So I feel incredibly comfortable with the expertise and skills and the minds that have been on this, and to be able to work with a high quality developer who has been publicly named as Hesperia, to know that this is, you know, someone who's worked so well in heritage precincts, delivered some incredible architecture, very high quality landscape, understands the importance of the public realm. I just see a very bright future ahead for Leederville. So what we are doing is we're releasing this now for public comment. So a 6-week public advertising of a business plan. It is another process that we're going through because, as mentioned, it's very high value, very precious public land. So we must go through a major transaction under the Local Government Act, very public, very much transparent, opening this up for comment from both the community but also for others to have a look and see whether they think this is the right deal or whether they would like to propose something different. So no decision has been made to sell the land. No decision has been made to proceed until we can go through this process, but it's the first opportunity our community has had to actually view this and see this and make comment on it. So that will be available on Imagine Vincent, and look forward to getting all of that feedback from many interested people. Councillors, anything further? Okay, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Declare that carried. Simon, thanks for coming in. Sorry we didn't ask you a question, but appreciate you being here. Okay, so I believe the next item is 10.2, approval to advertise draft animal amendment local law. This is an absolute majority decision required. Councillors, can I have a mover and seconder? Moved by Councillor Wallace, seconded by Councillor Warner.
Thanks, Nicole. I don't have much to say on this one. Just support the officer's recommendation.
Quite perfunctory. Councillor
I
Warner.
mean, I got a lot of other views on cat content.
Yeah, I know. I know. I think that's how we actually ended up in this situation. It was, yeah.
Oh, I won't speak on this. No, thanks.
Next time round. Councillor Warner, nothing. Councillors, any further comment? Okay, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Declare it carried. Item 10.3, glyphosate use in the City of Vincent. Can I have a mover and seconder? Moved by Councillor Loden, seconded by Councillor Wallace.
Thank you, Mayor. I agree with everything that administration says in the report. I guess my concern is that we don't have a solution if all of a sudden something changes in that external policy space and it's no longer appropriate to utilise glyphosate in the city. So I do have an amendment that I've sent to Wendy for some wording that she can share on the screen, but I'd like to let others speak on the item first. Thanks.
Thanks for admin for this report. Like glyphosate is a pretty controversial item, but I think it is one that does have a place for use with appropriate controls in place. We asked a few questions last week around what controls we have in the occupational health space for our personnel during its application, because I perceive that to be by far the the largest risk with its use. So thank admin for their detail around that. Also thanks for investigating glyphosate or residual glyphosate in soils after application. There weren't a heap of samples taken, but I think the results that came through were positive. At the concentrations observed the day after application, they're of no danger to humans unless you're ingesting literally kilograms of soil at that rate. And I think it's shown pretty clearly that the natural degradation processes through soil are effective in reducing it to below laboratory limits of concentration within a week or so. There was a little commentary in the report around dilution by rainfall. The glyphosate strongly absorbs to soil and isn't very mobile in water, so I doubt that would have had much of an impact on that secondary result. But further sampling to confirm that might be appropriate. But yeah, otherwise, I'm satisfied the city has done what it can to minimize its use, controls its use very well, and I'm more than comfortable to see it continue to be used in this manner.
Could I also just say I did actually put together a couple of amendments that aren't on the table. Wendy, can I just check if you've received those as well? We might need to put those up on the screen to see if anyone's interested at some point as well. Okay, thank you, Councillor Wallace. Councillors, any further debate? Councillor Loden?
So I have an amendment. I don't know if you have it in a format, Wendy, that you can share, but I'll read it out and then if I can get a seconder. So this would add a new 2 to the amendment, to the item, which is to request that administration provide options with a recommendation to council to undertake a trial of alternative weed management within city reserves that does not utilise glyphosate. And if I can get a seconder, I'll speak to that item.
Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Hallett.
Thank you. So I totally accept the reality of this challenge, that it's absolutely horrendously expensive to go utilising these alternative treatment technologies. But what I do see is whilst we don't have a position where this is harmful to people at this point in time, there are trends happening in other countries around this space. I mean, we had a guy sue Monsanto in the US for wrongful death because of glyphosate, which I'm not presupposing would happen here, but I still feel that we need to still be putting time and effort into investigating these alternative options so that we're prepared in the situation where we are actually required to stop using glyphosate if the recommendations change, and that we actually then have to quickly try and find an alternative source to do this. So I think it's important that we need to keep trialing these options, particularly in our parks and reserves. And so I would request that administration, if council supports it, looks into further options and with the idea of coming back with a proposal for a trial of something. Doesn't have to be big scale. It's just helping us to continue to understand what these costs and what the options are available to the city if and when this happens.
Wendy, is it possible to make that bigger? I can't read it at all from here, and even with my glasses on. I can read it now. Councillor Hallett as the seconder.
Thank you. Not much to add other than, I guess, one of my concerns is that with humans, obviously, there's not strong evidence around health harms, but there is more evidence around toxicity, particularly for amphibians. And so in relation to this particularly, it would be good to hear from administration, not now, but perhaps if this passes in the context of this, a trial around places where we've got water bodies reserves as opposed to just the ecozone areas within parks.
It might be worthwhile doing a second amendment, because I think if it being specific would help if you're looking at doing a trial, but I'll leave that up to you to consider. Councillors, any further debate on the amendment? Councillor Gontaszewski.
I have the sense that we have been doing trialing of alternatives, so I'm unsure as to what this particular trial is going to deliver over and above the existing program of work that has been undertaken to reduce no, I'm not sure that's glyphosate. And so I guess I would be interested in some commentary from administration as to what, I guess, alternative weed management, my understanding, has been trialled. So I presume that this is alternative and additional to what is already being done. And I guess I'd just like to get some comment from administration in relation to this amendment.
A Parks manager is here online. Manager of Parks, would you like to take that question?
Through the chair. Yes, so we do trial and use alternative weed control. I guess we don't have a specific reserve where we do this exclusively. So we could, if the amendment specified a park, then that would be appropriate. But yeah, we are constantly trialing alternatives weed management techniques as and when they do arise.
And if I could just, in terms of the commentary in relation to the feasibility and resourcing involved, should such a trial be requested by council?
Yeah, well, there would be significant budget implications or resourcing, I guess, budget and staff if we did want to trial a location with no glyphosate use. But I suppose that would also depend on the size of the trial area. Yeah, we could trial steam control in town centres, but I think based on the evidence provided in the report from other councils, I think we have a clear indication of the costs involved in that.
I'll just speak to it. I think I'd be interested to hear some commentary in relation to how that we could minimise the work involved. I feel that the civil cases that have been undertaken in other jurisdictions were related to workplace health and safety obligations and the users of the chemicals that were potentially not provided with adequate training, protective equipment and support. And we've asked questions and been assured by administration that those practices are in place within the city. And so I think what we're talking about here is, I guess, a desire to be prepared should the APVMA advice change. And I guess I feel that it is unlikely that advice would change without consultation with industry and affected outcomes, unless there was like a radical scientific discovery, and I don't necessarily see that coming forward. And having some experience in bureaucratic processes, I'm just not sure that is something that we're likely to have to turn on a dime and be able to implement, and be required to implement. But I do always appreciate the idea of like reducing chemical use. But I think there's lots of ways that we can spend our money, and I would prefer to see this sort of project really contained. So if it was to be successful, and I guess then the question is, if it was contained to some really minor park, then is it going to give us the information that we really need? So I'm a bit conflicted on this one.
Councillors, your closing debate on the amendment, are you asking a question?
So I was just going to amend the amendment if I can get agreement from.
Like there's a place you go where you might get too far. Sorry, Manager of Governance, open to amending amendments, but have we come too far for that? So should we just leave it as is and then a further amendment can come forward? Yeah, I think we have progressed to I think you're talking about narrowing the
can I,
scope.
yeah, can I provide some? So I would be proposing to not utilize glyphosate around Hyde Park water body. If that makes it more specific, if that
I'm
helps.
hearing the governance manager saying that's quite different. So we might have to. Do you want to turn your mic on?
Through the chair, I think that scope is widely different. Currently, it's consider options around and recommendations to council, but if we narrow it down to a specific location, that might be quite limiting. So it might be better to go with this amendment, see how we go, and then if you think we need a more specific action, we can table that also.
Okay, we can keep going. It's all right. I know you're trying to be efficient and I appreciate that. I'll make some comments. I found this report probably the best and most informative report that we've had, because we've been talking about glyphosate for some time. And I know the team has been trialing different things, and that they recently acquired an agricultural tool that can detect chlorophyll. Chloroform is something from a horror movie. Chlorophyll, yes, I haven't done biology for a while. How embarrassing. And that we have actually reduced glyphosate, and the report talks about the fact that we're using the same volume, but we've also expanded our public open space, expanded our eco zoning projects. We actually do, where the parks team do use glyphosate to kill off the woody perennial weeds. So I think that, you know, the team has gone to efforts to really reduce glyphosate. And at the same time, I found the report really interesting when it talked about some of the impacts of things like steam, hot water, and the pelargonic and organic chemicals, that you do have to use a lot more of the chemical. You have to completely saturate all of the leaves, that you're using more chemicals, and that can have its own adverse impacts, and that the hot water and steam can affect roots and the I'm going to say biodiversity, but I know that's not entirely right. Ashley's looking at me like, write your words down before you start speaking. Yeah, so I sort of thought, you know, that these alternates that we've been thinking, and obviously the team's also then teamed up with Welga, and they've had meetings with all of the different local governments that have been trialling different things, that they're not necessarily the panacea, and that they have their own issues that they bring. So and then there's the cost. So there's lots of different elements to this, and I think that it's a hard case. Like, it's sort of not necessarily mounting for high cost interventions, where some of those interventions have already proven to be somewhat problematic. So I'm probably a little bit unresolved on this as well, and I wouldn't want to put a lot of money towards this just based on the information in the report. I did have a couple of things that I jotted down for your consideration. As you know, I can't move amendments, and that was around continued residual testing, and for those results to be provided to council, and also that administration provide an annual report to council on the volume of glyphosate used, and continuing to seek to minimise use wherever possible within the allocated budget. I'm sure that doesn't go far enough, Councillor Loden, but it was, you know, there's just some options there. Potentially could look at a smaller scoped trial, but I probably still would like to hear from the parks manager about what that might look like in terms of cost. So probably don't support this amendment is what I'm trying to say, but prepared to listen to more. Councillor Loden? Yes?
So my understanding of how I've worded that is it would have to come back to council before any money was spent. It's basically going and figuring out if there are alternative options for our parks. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Yeah,
I think that is the literal reading of it. But I think in some ways you could say the report, we've sort of asked that, and the report has come back and said administration's recommending no. So then perhaps the alternative is to consider. Anyway, you may have support for this amendment. We don't know yet. But does anyone else wish to speak on the amendment? Okay, Councillor Alexander.
I don't know whether it's helpful, but over history, you seem to see these things. Everyone tells you they're fine. And then eventually it comes out of America that they've been using them in America and someone gets sued for 3 million and they're not fine. Now, I know you've got to investigate each one every time, but there seems to be a track record of these things. So I'm inclined to support the amendment, even though that's not particularly helpful.
Thank you, Councillor Alexander. I'll put the amendment unless anyone else wishes to speak. All those in favour? It's 3 in favour. All those against? That's the amendment is lost. Councillor Loden, would you like to move a different amendment? No, you don't wish to? Okay.
What about not using new water?
Councillor Castle.
Thank you, Mayor. I suppose just a comment. I think that there is potentially a feeling in the chamber and in the community that it is a question of when we are no longer able to use glyphosate. I think for this council, the question is when and how much will it cost? I didn't support the amendment because I believe that what it was asking us to do has already been done. But I do think we should be continuing to move towards a position where we can stop using it, minimize it, and then stop using it. And so I suppose my preference, I'm not going to move an amendment to the effect, but my preference would be that this is considered as part of next year's budget, because at the end of the day, we have no money on budget to progress some of the options that are available to us. We don't have a plan to how we could fund that if we were to do it this financial year, but I do think we should be moving in the direction of allowing for alternative methods. If the only barrier is cost, that is something that we can control, that we can certainly consider. So that would be my observation as the direction that we should be moving on this in the city.
Councillors, anything further on this item? All right, I'll put the substantive. All those in favour? I declare that carried. Okay, item 10.4, which is RFT IE 259 of 2023 Beatty Park Leisure Centre 12 and 30 metre pool tile renewal. Can I have a mover and seconder, please? I did request this one. I can't move it. Moved by Councillor Loden, seconded by Councillor Warner. Councillor Loden.
Supportive of the officer recommendation.
Councillor Warner. Okay. Councillors, the reason I raise this is that I would like to request that we have a project plan presented on this project to council, understanding details such as project owner and project sponsor. And that was all from me. Councillor Gonchevsky.
Can I move an amendment to that effect?
It is very much welcome to you.
I would like to do that.
The amendment being that council requests a project plan for the works be provided to council, outlining details such as project sponsor and project owner.
Yeah, I think we would usually have a project on a page that would set out those details as well as key milestones, key risks.
So it probably doesn't need that last bit about project. Request a project plan for the works be presented to council. Does that cover it?
I'll just ask for a time frame because I'll put that in the amendment.
Yes, through the chair, there is one already prepared. I had meant to attach it to the briefing notes and it was remiss of me in the response. So more than happy to present it at the next council workshop.
I'm sorry, but when it's a council resolution, I don't think it's about presenting things to a workshop. It's always about presenting things back to council formally.
You can present it at the next OCM, but very happy to have it circulated to council members for their information at an earlier date. I don't believe that the amendment is requesting that the project plan needs to be endorsed by council. So I don't think that there's anything that says that you can't proceed with the project, but it is for formal and public noting and discussion.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Gontaszewski. We'll include it in the information bulletin.
Is there a seconder? Seconded by councillor Hallett. Any discussion on the amendment? We'll put the amendment. All those in favour? Declare that carried. We're back to the substantive. Is there anything further? Put the substantive motion. All those in favour? And declare that carried. So I'm a bit confused. Did we call out 12.1 or do we need to deal with that? You did? Having a rethink. Okay, so item 12.1, appointment to the West Australian Local Government Association Central Zone Council representatives. Councillor Hallett moved and seconded by Councillor Loden.
Slightly awkward because it's nominating me, but I guess I just wanted to comment that I think it's been unfortunate that we haven't had reps at Wowga a lot of the last year. So thank you to admin for bringing this forward again to appoint someone. We've all got lots of committee hats that we wear, but I think it's really important that these roles are filled. So I'm happy to put myself forward.
Councillor Loden.
Thank you for putting yourself forward. I think you're going to make a great Wowga rep, Jonathan.
Thank you, Jonathan. Councillor Hallett, appreciate it. Any further comments? I'll put the motion. All those in favour and declare that carried. Next item 12.2, report and minutes of the audit committee meeting held on the 29th of June 2023. On this one, there is an amendment on the grey laying on the table for consideration. Is there a mover and seconder for this amendment, please? For this motion, please. Moved by Councillor Alexander, seconded by Councillor Gontaszewski. Councillor Alexander.
Yes, look, I think it's an important report, an important issue, and we really need to know why some of these things have happened and how, and as you put here, what's going to be done about them. So I certainly support receiving the administration's plan responses to the audit findings.
Well, can't quite deal with the amendment just yet because I will have to go to the seconder. But the seconder has said she doesn't wish to speak. So it can be moved by you if you'd like to, Councillor Alexander, if you wanted to move the amendment.
Yes, I'm happy to
move the amendment, seconded by Councillor Gontaszewski. Sorry, Councillor Wallace. Do you wish to speak to it any further, Councillor Alexander?
No.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Gontaszewski. Councillor Wallace, did you want to speak to it?
Not really. I think, there wasn't, well, but
Oh, go on then.
Significant high risk items identified in that report, and I think it is worth surfacing it for discussion with the rest of the council and with the CEO in attendance. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you to the audit committee members. Any further discussion on the amendment? Okay, I'll put the amendment. All those in favour and declare that carried. We're back to the substantive, assuming no further debate. I'll put the motion. All those in favour, declare that carried. Okay, so we have our last item for the evening, which is item 13.1. This is a notice of motion from Councillor Ron Alexander on prohibition of third-party advertising in Hyde Park. Councillor Alexander, I assume you're moving your motion?
I'll discuss it and then work out from there.
Okay, but before you do that, I do just need to know if you're prepared to move it, because otherwise we can't discuss it. It doesn't have any status for discussion unless we have a moved motion.
Well, I'd like to let it lapse because I think there needs to be other discussion than voting straight on this amendment.
I did see your email that came through with a number of questions, and that option does remain open to you, that you could not move this evening but bring it back next month if you wanted to have time to have more time for questions to be answered.
Yeah, I think it needs a little bit of time because it's
Okay.
quite a big issue down in that direction.
Yep, sure. Okay, then given that it's not been moved, that will that won't have any status for this meeting, but can be brought back at your behest to the following
Can
council
I
meeting.
explain what happened?
Not really, because there's not really an opportunity in the meeting procedures, local law, to discuss an item that's not been moved or seconded.
Okay.
But we have received your email today and seen the questions that you've asked. So I think we've got an indication of why you require a bit more time. Okay, so given that we are not dealing with that item this evening and we don't have any urgent business or confidential items, we have had a very speedy meeting, and I can thank you all for being here this evening. There have been some big items, particularly Leederville car park. So please have a look online at our Imagine Vincent website tomorrow to have a look at that very exciting item. So thanks all, and I'll declare the meeting closed at 7:39 p.m.